Inside this episode, we'll discover exactly what is our responsibility as human beings when we either experience an affair and or infidelity inside our own personal world or through the experience of a friend. We'll tackle it by going deep into things of what is the actual definition of an affair? How can we recognize our societal bias towards a cheater? Learning how to best support not only the cheated, but rather choosing to support both the cheated and the cheater at the very same time? Things like, can a violator of trust get to a definitive why of their actions? And of course, what steps can a cheater take to say more than the typical "I'm sorry"? Welcome to Weekly Wins and Losses. My name is James Hepner, former real estate entrepreneur turned self-development hacker, coach, and fulfillment strategist. Each week, we bring you a thought to wrestle with that'll help you live fully alive and gain more life. Real life is made up of both wins and losses. Both were designed for your good. That's basic reality. Without facing and learning how to embrace your losses for greater gain, you miss out. You leave 50% of your life experience on the table. So with that, let's begin the show. With inflation rates rising, interest rates shooting up, gas prices skyrocketing, and the continued global unrest, it's easy to find what's wrong in the world. Tony Robbins says, what's wrong in the world is always available, but so is what's right. Instead of trying to hope and wish the world into a better place, it's time to make the most important decision any of us can ever make, and that is to invest in yourself. Now, you know I've always stood with you as you've navigated the uncertainties of life's reality. However, it's now time that I step up and take decisive action to walk alongside your current life journey in a new way, and that is by making myself available to you in a radical, new way during these challenging times. So for a limited time, I'm inviting you to a 45-minute strategic business life consultation. No charge and no strings attached. This consultation is where you'll regain the reins of your life. It's where you'll gain clarity on exactly why you're stuck, moving you directly towards your optimal outcomes. And I'll be honest, and I'm humbled to say, however, my clients' generous reflection of their time spent with me reveals the truth. The skills they've been able to master in such a short period of time by engaging in our one-on-one strategic sessions have changed their lives in so many ways. This is the only invitation that I can fathom that will put my skin in the game of your life in such a way that will allow us, you and I, to address your specific needs with precision and excellence. 45 minutes, just you and I, together on one call to get you headed in the direction you crave most. Here's what my clients report after one-on-one sessions with me. A decrease in indecision. An increase in clarity, confidence, and courage. An increase to fully capitalize on what's directly before them. An increase in the impact that they crave to have at work, on their families, and inside their communities. A decrease in pain and suffering. A decrease in anxiety. So, if you want to move beyond old stories, get clear in where you're headed so that you can shake your world, then here's a rich opportunity for you today. One-on-one strategic business life consultation with me. One-on-one 45 minutes. So, if you want to maximize this opportunity, if you want to reclaim and regain your inner power, then you're going to want to slow things down during these challenging times. And how? Well, engaging and getting right with your life and making a life plan. I should let you know that this offer will fill up and expire. Click in the show notes to get your 45-minute strategic business life consultation. No charge, no strings attached. May this episode change your everyday life. Awesome. Welcome, friends. Today we have with us a special guest. Her name is Dr. Deb Miller. She's a licensed professional counselor with over 25 years as a therapist working with people of all ages. Welcome to the show, Deborah.
Thank you, James. Glad to be here.
You have a truly inspiring
message when I first met you, and we got to know each other a little bit, and you focus on how you help couples repair their relationship after an affair. You know, in the last decade, it was just phenomenal. And you know, one of the things that I really, really, really appreciated is that, and I guess through your book, and I haven't read all of it, I've read little excerpts of it, but more than sorry, 5 steps to deepen your apology after you've committed infidelity. I know after I tuned into that, I'm like, this lady, she's got something special. So it's just a beautiful thing. So thanks for showing up with that, right? And so you know, one of the things, listeners, that I want you to just tap into is think about this. How often isn't it, and this is like the universal truth typically, that we can all do a little better at fixing the intentional and unintentional slights that wounded others. Now, what's fascinating when we talk about unintentional and intentional slights, just think about people. Think about, how does society, when there's a situation where there's a cheater and there's the cheated, how do we target often the cheater, and how can we remind ourselves that we need to do a better job at addressing both? So Deb, talk to us a bit about what had you tap into this work, because honestly, you're focusing on the person who's committing the crime, the sinner. You're saying, let's not forget them. And it blew me away. How can we do this? And, or perhaps not how, but what got you into this line of work?
Well, as you said, James, I've been in private practice for over 25 years and working with a lot of couples who want to come in and fix their relationship after someone cheated. And traditionally, the wounded one, I will call them, the one that got cheated on, just needs to vent and needs to get a lot of validation, and they just need to share their hurt and their pain and ask why'd you do this? What, you know, and they, of course, do need to do that. But meanwhile, the cheater, the one that committed the infidelity, usually sits there mutely, just, you know, like, why'd you do it? I don't know. Well, you know, how many times you do it? I don't know. Well, you know, what about her? I don't, you know, they just didn't, there was so much shame, hopefully, and guilt about their sin, as you said, that they just shut down. So the repair of the relationship gets stuck because one person is, you know, getting some validation, but not getting answers. And the other person who committed the infraction isn't growing, isn't able to process what happened to them. And so I started looking around professionally at resources, and there just aren't that many for the person that cheated. Most of the resources are supporting the person that was violated, the trust was broken. And I realized that the repair wasn't going to get fixed. There was not going to happen unless both parties did their work. And the person that cheated needed to do some individual work with a therapist, you know, so that they could openly explore all that they went through and why and what, and tell their story. Because most people that cheat don't really tell their story. You know, they just want to minimize it. They want to describe it in briefest terms and push it away. And so, you know, the book I wrote is for the person. It's kind of a journal book for them to process through some steps that I've come up with. Main one being empathy, you know, because to really sense what the other person feels, how they got hurt, that's really powerful to be able to communicate it, not only to feel it, but to communicate it. And to get to empathy, they have to get through their own defense mechanisms. So there's, you know, need for empathy, a need for self-exploration, which is pretty long and involved and ongoing for the rest of your life. And then saying that out loud, because again, the secrecy, the definition of an affair is that it's a secret relationship. And even in repair of it, the secrecy continues because there's very few people that the offender wants to share openly with. And so you as therapists, you're safe because you have confidentiality. But I also push people to find at least one person out there in their life that can hear their story and love them and help them process it and give them feedback without, shutting them off. So saying it out loud is one of the steps. And then making the apology. How do you say I'm sorry? Because that's also what I found in my office. The offender just wants to say, I'm sorry. Why are we still talking about it? What more do you want me to say? And there's a lot more to say. And so the book tries to help anyone deepen how they say sorry. And there's more to it. It's not as simple as the two words, which of course, as children, we're all taught to say I'm sorry. And it does make things go away or satisfies them for the short term. So I love it's an ongoing process. And that's why I know that's a long answer to your question, but this is why I'm here. I was very frustrated. And it was a book that was being written in my head for years, honestly. And
well, what I find fascinating is I can only imagine, like you were saying, you did the research and you couldn't really find a whole bunch of steps for the cheater, like how to get them unstuck. Like to your point, there's validation, but there's no answers. And there's not a lot of growth opportunities for the cheater. The cheater goes, why did I? Not really sure. And so you're a human that comes on board. You're one of these rare people. You come on board and you look at this thing and you think, well, there's a hole here. And, honestly, sometimes when we observe that there's a hole in the marketplace, it can seem like a marketing ploy. It's like, well, this is like perhaps an opportunity to make some capital. Yet the read I have on you, and I've always had this ever since I got to know you, is you're well beyond transactional value. Like you're not about this. Like you're a semi-retired counselor with 25 years of professional experience. And so you have a heart for people. And what's interesting is at this stage of your career, you're coming on board and you're coming alongside something that's quite difficult for people to manage. Like to think about, Black Lives Matter. I know Terry Crews, for example, he had a tweet and he talked about how, let's fight for equality. And so he's of color and he talks about, let's do this together. This is not one side or the other. But the timing was off. And so here I observe your career, you're semi-retired and you write this book and you talk about, listen, we need to do justice to restoration. We need to bring restorative justice instead of this redemptive violence. The whole, North America or North American prison situation is quite dire in the sense there isn't a lot of rehabilitation for those that have committed the crime. And here you come along and you volunteer into the space. And I'm sure a lot of people would say, how dare you? Why aren't you focusing on me? I was the one that was cheated on. Why don't you focus on me? So what came to heart that allowed, and perhaps use empathy, but what came to mind within empathy that just had you go, I have to do this? And, by the way, I never hear from your message that you feel strained or you feel penalized or punctured by society for doing this. You're just a presence that showed up and you're like, I think this is needed. But so what had you come along and insert the variety of empathy that you bring that can sit here with the cheater?
Mm-hmm. I guess, it was not one moment, of course. It was many years of listening to people and talk, and probably more the privilege of sitting with the person who cheated individually, which was rare, honestly. And hearing them needing to talk about what they liked about being in their affair, what they learned about themselves, what they wish they could apply in their other relationships. And also processing how the naivete that their choice to cheat wouldn't hurt anyone. And now all of a sudden it seems like everyone's against them, their family and friends and neighbors and church, everybody, is judging them, and how dire that feels. And so it's just realizing, as I have even with in other topic areas, the power of empathy, to sit with someone and say, tell me more, and to really feel what they're feeling and to really validate what they're feeling is so liberating. I'm sure you've had it, you receive that yourself.
100%.
And the times I do, I'm like, wow, thanks, and sometimes I get, in the past I would get too clinical. I remember one client, she was going through a very ugly divorce and she was the wounded one. And I don't know, I think I texted her something like, I really heard for you. I really understand. I really sense how much in pain you are. And she's like, that was the best thing you could have ever said to me. Like, oh, I mean, I didn't, rather than talking about what she can do to feel stronger or how to, take the next step. She just needed someone to say, this is really shitty, right? You're going through. This is really shitty. So that, but back to your other point about, did I get any judgment from people saying, why are you taking their side? And I'm not taking a side. I'm just saying, if you truly want to repair a relationship, it takes both sides to figure out, and that we all are not perfect and we all have flaws and we all have sins and we all need to figure out how to look at ourselves and make change, ask ourselves questions, get feedback, and process that, all that we've done. But I did have a good friend who volunteered to read my draft, and she was the wounded one. And it was tough for her. It was tough for her to read. She doesn't want to have empathy for her ex. She doesn't want to have sympathy and recognize that he might have had whatever reasons going on. I mean, she's just ticked because she had to pay a big price. I get that. But my hope is, in this case, they did not repair their relationship. But my hope is that he would look at himself in the future or reflect on what he'd done so that his future relationships could be healthier, so that it's not repeated.
Yeah, that's just lovely. And you're you're one of these courageous ones. So you give your book, your writing, your draft, you give it to a friend who was the wounded, she was the cheated. Let's see if our friendship can withstand this. This is how I, so good on you. I honor you for that courage. It's just a beautiful thing. I love that so much.
Well, we all operate on two levels. Emotionally, she was like, ugh, how dare you? But intellectually, she gets it. Intellectually, she goes like, yeah, I know. If only he would have read this book at the time, if only he would have looked at it himself, and she gets intellectually that there is a void out there in the resources. So
if you don't mind me asking, so like you said, if you stay in your therapist head, you don't connect at the level that you crave to. And so what you did with your friend, not the book reading friend, but this other client, you just said, hey, listen, this is shitty to your tone, right? This is shitty. Your languaging this is shitty. And so now your friend who picks up your draft and is reading it, is she just tapping into and connecting with the knowledge base of who you are? Or is she actually feeling that we need to activate empathy towards the partner? Because that's the space where she might have a click going, wait a minute, right?
Yeah. No, I am not preaching that she needed empathy for her ex. That's she, when you've been wounded as painfully as in this case and many other divorce and affair cases, you get a choice. If you want to hang on to that anger, you've got to process that. If that's healthy for you or helpful, it may also be a good boundary for you to keep, your distance and not get into wishful thinking or, forgiveness too quickly when it's not really being deserved or asked for. I'm stating empathy overall as a goal for all of us, of course, but if you, the cheater, if you really want to repair relationships, you got to work on your empathy. Because, when people have affairs, they get really narrow-minded and they just get really hedonistic. I'm having fun and I can't look up. I can't see, all the other people that might be feeling not so much fun because of my choices. So
have you heard about sitting Shiva in the Jewish tradition? They have this thing called Do you mind explaining for the audience what is Sit Shiva? And the reason that I bring this up is to your point on being with your client and just saying this is shitty. So audience, you people listening, just feel with you're going through something that's quite dramatic and quite shitty, and you're going to somebody and you're hoping they're going to help you. And what they do is they sit Shiva with you. Deb, would you like to explain for the audience what is Sit Shiva? Because when I experienced that, and to your point earlier, you probably have had something like that happen in your life, or somebody just sat with you in this. And what's interesting is that sitting didn't have a desire. There's no craving that you should be anywhere else but just here. But you want to explain what that is in simplistic terms for people? Because when I discovered that, and the gift of me bringing it to people and me experiencing it, I'm like, oh my goodness, another level of compassion and empathy that's not going anywhere but here.
Mm-hmm. Well, my disclaimer is I'm not Jewish. So I know
Likewise.
that sitting Shiva is when, someone's lost a loved one, passed away, people come and sit with them. They're present. And that is very powerful, just to show up. And so to apply that to the context of a cheater, they don't usually have anybody just sitting with them. The wounded people often do. Mm-hmm. If they tell people. Sometimes when affairs happen in relationships, they don't want to tell anybody, because the shame and how it might affect their kids and for a lot of reasons. So sometimes both parties really need just somebody to sit Shiva, to be present, to show up, and just not necessarily come with tons of advice but just to be a good listener and be present. And that's why one of the steps in my book is about saying it out loud, because, if we keep everything inside for so long, it builds up and it becomes out of control because we haven't released it. We can equate that to having a temper tantrum. If we're holding our anger too long and we don't express it in a way to keep it manageable, it just becomes too big.
So much is coming alive for me, because one of the things I want to ask you some point in time, and if I forget, bring it back in, but I was going to ask you, so how do you, as a therapist, a counselor, how do you work alongside within yourself, being okay with sitting with, but also making forward progress? And of course, sitting with is the progress. So we don't need to be restless and anxiously striving away from the present moment, because that helps nothing. But in order for it to be healthy for the other human, actually, why don't you just say that first before I go on to the next thought? How do you help your client critically assess that point?
Yeah. Well, you ask. Because sometimes from my point of view, I'm like, is this really helping? Didn't feel like a very therapeutic session, or I'm not sure we got anything very deep or dug very far. But I'll ask the client, was this helpful? And I trust that because I used to work more with kids. And so that was a little different judgment call. But with adults, you have to believe them. Number one, if they make another appointment, that says, okay, they must think it's helpful. Secondly, you just check in. Some therapists are very formalized. They'll say, what are your goals? How did we do? I'm not quite that specific. So my is more of a anecdotal assessment if it's helpful or not.
Nice.
But sometimes it can get, especially if you've worked with someone a really long time, it's comfortable and it becomes more friend-like, and there's value to that. We've definitely learned. Was it AARP just put out some study that, one of the predictors of age is about your feeling of community and friends. And so you have to be careful as a therapist not to be the friend, the only friend. The goal is to have them make friends, go be connected to other people.
The goal is to be open and share their story with you, but also decide that the gift is in them activated when they make you safe, but then they reckon that what they're doing by making you safe is what they can do for other select people as well. That's kind of what you're saying, right? To open up and share.
Yeah, so they get the experience in the therapy office, that they can do this outside. They can laugh with someone else. They can be honest and show vulnerability and be present with another person. So yeah, Yeah. So that's a therapeutic question that you get, when the client comes in and just wants to know about your personal life, you share some, but the reality is they're craving friendship. They really are.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
So let's go a little deeper. When I think about the cheater, when you think about not the wounded one, but the one who created the wound, perhaps the one who created the wound is wounded himself, like hurt people, right? What's required to have the cheater open up? And you've been, opening up to some degree and sharing a few things here, there, but make it simple for the audience. Like, what is required for the cheater to open up and go beyond? I don't know. I just want to get away from it.
Yeah.
What's required?
Well, sadly, I don't have any percentage because it's very hard to measure this, but the largest percent of people who cheat and get caught are the ones that come to therapy. We really don't have a number of people who have an affair and nothing negative happens per se. No one knows of it or gets wounded, whatever. But, getting caught is an outing. It's a way of saying, oh, wait, I'm not who everyone thinks I am. Everyone's looking at me differently. Oh, maybe I need to figure this out. And so often it is pushed by another person to do the work, because we are all have a self-protective shell. We all have this defense mechanism that says, when I look in the mirror, hey, I'm okay. Yeah, I messed up, but you know what? It's no big deal. Everybody does that. And so we have this self-righting ability to just not dig deep, not self-reflect, not self-analyze, and push ourselves to, first of all, admit our sins, admit our vulnerabilities, but also set restitution goals. So,
So you're making me think about this self-reflection. I had a little conversation with a friend the other day. I was going for a walk and I was just talking through my earpiece, and he says to me, James, have you ever noticed that? Because what happens is me and the friend, we get pretty deep into a conversation. We get layered and we just start laughing and we get deep and we really enjoy it. And then I said, oh, this is so much fun. And I just really enjoy talking with you. And then I said to him, it's interesting. Sometimes when we talk to people and we make them think, or at least we create the invitation for them to think, they seem to respond in a certain way. And then he goes, well, listen, I heard something that goes a bit like this. Ask people to think and they get angry at you. Tell people a joke and they love you. And I thought, that's really interesting, actually. And so to the point, how do we, and again, not that we are, that we have to point ourselves as the Jesus of the world, because frankly, we're not. We're just humans. But how is it that, so to the question on, I'm spilling onto the context or within the context, what's required to have the cheater open up? Self-reflection. So how would you say as society, just as a people, we could be perhaps playful in our approach? I'm not sure how you see this, playful in our approach, but also just be real, and so that whether we know if they're cheating or not, that isn't even our play, but it is just to put out into the universe something that is going to create the invitation for people to become self-aware, not self-critical, but self-aware, where they take that self-reflection and bring it to the surface. And the reason I asked the question from that angle is because, like you said, a lot of people who cheat aren't caught. So we want to bring those people in as well. We want to engage those people.
Right. Well, it's all about safety, and about feeling like I can sit in this room and talk about myself and not be judged and to be heard. So that in counseling terms, that's called positive regard. I have positive regard for you because you're human. And my expectations are that you're not perfect. I know that, but I can't lecture you, judge you, because that'll shut you down. I know that. So to get someone willing to open up and self-explore, there's going to be motivation outside the therapy office, of course, to do the work. But once they're in the therapy office, if it feels safe, if it feels like a connection to me or the therapist, then they're more willing to open up. And so does humor come into it? Yeah, because it's heavy work. I mean, it's exhausting. for someone who's finally sharing their secret. I mean, they're going to really, and I'll tell them after the first session, you might want to go home and just take a nap, or, don't do any heavy thinking after this, because you're just going to be tired. When you hold in all this emotion for so long and finally let it out, it's kind of like, ugh, you're just exhausted. And so, there's definitely, therapy sessions traditionally are 50 minutes, 55 minutes or something. And, as a therapist, you have to kind of like watch your clock and make sure, because you've got to wind it down so they can go back out in the world, and so, so sometimes you lighten it up at the end and be something silly, or give them a silly assignment, just something so that they don't walk out with this compressed chest and weight on their shoulders. That's the goal of our humanity, is how do we wave in and out of feeling something deeply. I mean, like right now we can talk about Ukraine and how painful it is to watch the news. And yet, sometimes you can feel bad, like, and then I went outside and played pickleball and had a good time. No, you have to be able to do both, and you have to be able to kind of contain both, but you have to not avoid the deep introspection, and that's easy.
Well, perhaps this is why you're such a burst, I was going to say bubble of joy. You're in semi-retirement, but you're like, I'm doing life. And here's the thing, life is a bunch, right? You can take yourself way too seriously, but perhaps the way you treat your clients is the way that you treat yourself in life. And that is, listen, yeah, we got to deal with the deep stuff, but at the end of the day, we got to find a way of making lightness of some of this as well. And both, and not trying to separate, but really enjoy both of these things and to integrate both of those stages. Speaking about, so let's say, for example, there's somebody that comes to your clinic, in your office, and you reckon very quickly that when you attempt to bring some lightness into it, they struggle towards trying to keep it heavy. What is that?
Well, you must have some experience, James. What are you thinking? Have you that you've had that with some of your clients?
Well, yeah, I have.
Yeah,
I have. And I think what comes surrounding that is a little bit in line with what you said earlier about non-judgmental. Because who is to say that heavy isn't positive for them? And so for me as a counselor, not counselor, I'm a coach. Sorry, you're a counselor, I'm a coach. Similar, a little different. But what comes up for me in that moment, if you're asking me, is the release. And so is it serving them is what I look for. How is it serving them? How is it serving them? So I ask question, how is it serving you? But what is it like for you? Because sometimes I do feel like people are addicted to their problems. And a cheater can stay a cheater, and a cheated can stay attracting in the future more of this behavior. It's pattern. So how do you sit with? And so right there, therapists and coaching, some people say coaching is a little more like, let's do something now. And therapy is a little more sitting with it. Some people would say, I don't know how I see it. I can see the point, but I think you and I are both about forward action, but being gracious and not being too anxious about solving the world's problems in a day. Like we're here now, and let's just enjoy this, and let's process this first. We can't just swipe like on our phone, just swipe. We're not processing anything. We got to slow it down.
I guess I hear what you're saying, that some people hold on to it because that's their style, or that's what somehow works for them, or gives them something back. Okay. I have one client. She had tons of health issues and had, a really traumatic religious experience in a very scary church. And she was angry that, she was running to me, she was running to some other alternative people, and that no one was really fixing her. And, finally and she worked in a traditional medical community. And she finally tripped over this doctor who's like, you need surgery. There's something physically wrong with you. And I mean, it was like a godsend. She was so caught up in the trauma, emotional trauma that she really legitimately had experienced, that she was unable to recognize her body was contributing to her stuckness, and that there was really something wrong with her, and there was so much fear of getting a traditional help for some reason. So once she got over that, I never saw her again. So I guess she felt better. But I think, the challenge is in the hour session of therapy, you have to have a container for that. And so if the person doesn't want to lighten up at the end and go out, you have to respect that.
Good point.
You still have to say, see you next week, or see you in 2 weeks, or whatever it is that you're going to do. You have to and that's maybe not as gratifying for me as a therapist to know that they're still walking out with tears streaming down their face or anger. But I also know that I can't really, I can only know what the person presents to me in the office. And I have to be humble about that.
Well, yeah, I love that. I love the way you ended it. You have to be humble about that. It takes a while to create a story, and so it might take you a while to unravel a story. So this is part of it. Deborah, what steps? I think you have 5 steps that a cheater can take to say more than "I'm sorry." And so listeners, pick this up. Typically we're like, well, I just need a good "I'm sorry." And you're saying, so that's to your book, more than "I'm sorry." 5.
Right. Well, I kind of alluded to it earlier, so I don't want to be too redundant, but step 1 is empathy, not mainly for the people you've hurt, but also for yourself. And so it kind of teaches you how to communicate empathy. And one is feeling it and and then the second is how to say it out loud. You got to say the words. And then the reflection, the self-discovery, which is, I call it navel gazing. How do you look inward and ask yourself why? Why did I cheat? Why did I do this? And to accept that there is no clear answer to that. And the answer to why you chose that path is a question you should continue to ask yourself for years to come. Because the question evolves, your answer evolves. You are going to have different perceptions, different reflections, different levels of self-understanding that's going to shape your answer to why. But it encourages you to look at your defense mechanisms, encourages you to look at, to understand the power of sex and what, all those hormones that happen and how that affects our decision-making and impulsivity. And to look at your moral code. Why did you choose, something that's anti-cultural by cheating? What other, just to identify that as a moral issue, even though some people are polyamorous, that's their choice. And so they would not see this as a violation, but truly understanding that the definition of affair, again, is a secret. You're having a secret relationship. And so I talk a lot about online relationships because they seem so innocent because they're not physical often. And yet they can be just as detrimental because it's a intimacy, it's a secrecy that your significant other may not know about.
So that's 3. 1 is empathy. 2.
That was 2. 2 is a biggie. 2, the self-exploration. Number 3 is say it out loud. You have to, confess in the Catholic sense, which I'm not Catholic either, but step 4 is set restitution goals. What are you going to do? Make some plans about how you're going to be different. And it's about journaling. It's about self-analysis. It's about continuing counseling, perhaps. And then step 5 is asking for forgiveness. And I give examples of letters of asking for forgiveness that says more than I'm sorry. And the reflection is, here's what I've now learned about myself. After going through step 1 through 4, I now get that I was a little self-absorbed, or that I was
that's interesting.
resentful.
I like that.
Yeah. So that letter is going to reflect what you've learned about yourself, so that when your significant other reads it or hears it, they have a little more understanding of where you are at, you the cheater, were at. But it's also, the letter also needs to reflect future intentions, future hopes, future promises to be different, restitution goals. So
love that. One of the things that comes to heart for me is when you said the why question. and I love the why, because the why brings up the why, how, what. They're all great questions. And I'm a sequential person. I really focus on the sequence of things because
Okay.
that's just how it is. Like for me, it's like,
Yeah.
and I'll never forget, years ago, I think I heard Tony Robbins say something like, do the right thing at the wrong time, it's the wrong thing to do. Do the right thing at the right time, and it's the right thing to do. So it's like, I saw this in my life. It's like, how is it? And sometimes I can get quite boisterous, like loud or like around my family, and the family enjoys it. And so it's like a version of fire. I'm just like my earth element's fire, but I realize it's not always the right time to do it. And so when I come in, I kind of read the environment. Then I realize, perhaps I'll come in, and I just like to call or describe my life as kind of like a hot dog. So there's like a hot dog bun at the top, and at the bottom, it's soft on both sides. And in the middle is the meat. So I come in and I bring the softness in the beginning, and then I put in the meat in the middle. It's like boom, and then I make sure it's all. That's my variety of life, right? And so, and so when I think about why questions, I often ask myself, to what end? Like when I ask why for me, does it actually create traction in my life? Can I actually see my life change and morph and move? And so the thought that I had is, how do you get your clients and to move from inner reflection and this creating this knowledge, this conscious awareness, and then the knowledge wake up to actual action? And I think I heard you say that, correct me if I'm wrong, but in step 5, and please help me out again, this is asking for forgiveness, step 5, correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So to me, it sounds like that asking for forgiveness is the action. All of this reflection that comes out in that ask at the end, or how is it? Perhaps I don't want to, bring something that isn't there. How would you say the why question can turn into a what question? Like, what is this for? What is it for? So if there's proactive, is it in that letter, or is there more than that? Or how would you language that?
There's a lot of action throughout all the steps. I mean, they're doing all these exercises around examining their defense mechanisms and around connecting with others, and about looking at their intimacy patterns, their relationship patterns, their personality style. I mean, there's a lot of actions that's going to help them understand themselves better in a deeper level. And the ultimate action is to communicate that self-understanding. And so we, in the counseling field, we typically say, don't ask the question why. Because people don't, as children, why'd you break the window? I don't know. It's just kind of usually when I ask why, or anyone asks why, we know the answer we'd like to get. And so the what, how, when, what'd you feel, what was happening in your life. Now, when you reflect on that incident, what thoughts do you have?
Wow.
What memories do you have? I mean, it's a semantics game. I mean,
I love it. I totally love it. And thanks for bringing that up, because for me, and this is just fantastic, because for me, the what question drives me to action, meaning, well, what is this for? And then but I hear where you're coming from. If you just stay with the feel, which is great, and sitting Shiva with is good, but I get it. The why is like driving you to action. So this is just super fun. So here's the question: so if you think about the violator of trust, can this individual, can this he, she, it, whatever this ends up being, get to the definitive way of, and the reason why? So the definitive why of their action, can they get right to the bottom of why this actually happened in their life? Can they get to the bottom of all of it?
Nope.
There you go.
You make guesses. You're making guesses. You're increasing your awareness. You're saying this contributed, but why the perfect storm? Oh, so I'm not a definitive person. I'm okay with living in the gray and not having to know exactly what motivate. I mean, I think it's important to guess. And as I said, if you asked a person what happened, why'd you have an affair if they were caught a week later, their answer is going to be so different than it will be a year later. Both are valid answers. It just reflects where they're at in their journey. And so you have to honor that. So, personal growth is a journey, and there's no, like, I did it, I'm over it. You're still on this journey, and, and you want to frame it that it's, it's part of our responsibility. It's kind of fun. It's kind of interesting. It makes our lives less stagnant to really pursue this journey. Yeah. So frame it that way.
It seems like a big trouble point to all of this is the decision to keep things secret. Or maybe it's like this. Maybe it's the decision, and of course, this is what secrecy is, just not sharing. But maybe it's just it's just choosing not to share. So how is it that we could, how would I language this? How is it that we could really assist society in choosing to not feel ashamed with the choices that we make? What level of trust and strength would it require? I don't know if that's a thing, but what would it require for us as a society to hit the bass note, like the thing beneath it all, so that we would actually be willing and open to share and not constantly like, oh, I've gone too far. Now I've got caught, like you said before. Now I got to reveal. And now the damage is likely much greater.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think, we try to differentiate between guilt and shame. Guilt is healthy. When you mess up, I want you to feel bad. I want you to feel remorse. I want you to feel willing to make change and make apologies. Shame is when you totally absorb your wrongdoing and it becomes part of your identity, part of, your fatalistic belief that nothing's going to change. You're always going to be this horrible person. You always deserve this kind of treatment. And so that's the challenge. And as a society, we all need to do better because we're all very self-righteous. I think as a society, we're so quick to judge. And, I have such curiosity that I get over, of course, about all the people that we see in the media who've cheated publicly and they got exposed and lost their jobs. And where are they now? Mm-hmm. Where have they grown from this? How are they doing? Are they in new relationships? And I'll never know, but I assume life goes on, right? So it's just interesting that as much as the Christian value is about that, Jesus died for our sins and we therefore are forgiven. And to really embrace that concept and belief is hard for us all, again, with people telling us how horrible we are, if that's the case.
This might be a silly question. If you consider if the cheater could stay at guilt versus shame, what would happen?
Then they'd take steps. They'd be more open. They'd be more honest. They'd be more willing to do this work. Yeah.
Do you think shame is mostly something that we receive from others? Or do we just like to think we receive it and really we're the creators of it? Because I don't know, for me, it seems like shame, like there has to be a home of shame for me to recognize if you bring shame to me, if you're giving me shame, I have to have a pretty developed place of shame within me. Or what's your thinking of this?
Yeah, I agree with you, James. I agree with you. I think that sometimes shame is taught, as a child, maybe that you're a bad person, you're a bad kid. And then we just hold on to that and have that vessel, that opening, that container for it. And so anything that happens is kind of feeds it more, fills it up more. That's my thing. I think that there's this internal work that somehow it turns the guilt into shame. Yeah. I mean, the ego is, we all want to work on our self-esteem and how to be stronger, et cetera. But, a lot of our self-esteem is really other esteem. It's how other people see us and the feedback we get from other people about how they perceive us and how they receive us. And so if other people are telling us negative messages about ourselves, you swallow it, swallow that. And if you don't have the counterattack of people who support you and believe in you, that's just there's no way to push it out, all the negative talk.
Talk to us a bit about trauma bonds. Some people have these trauma bonds. So this is like, I don't know, generational curse. I don't know if I want to talk about these things, but it's like a bond that you create out of trauma. And so they actually derive a measure of connectedness because of, and they feed each other. It's a self-fulfilling spiral. And one person provides the shame or the guilt, the other person doesn't know what to do with it, and it lashes back. And this is really the connecting point. If you think about these trauma bonds, like how would you say to properly assist? And again, there has to be a desired need in a couple or in an individual to break something like this. But how would you work with, and how do you work with, when people have become addicted to their pattern of living? This is the age-old question on personal development. How do you help somebody break a pattern?
Well, you have to help them become aware of the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
They have to, the more I talk about it, you just hopefully shine a light on it and help them to grasp the pattern within themselves. And then, and that's easier said than done, how to get them fully accept it.
With the people that you've worked with, when you shine a light not only on the cheated, but the cheater as well, what have you experienced within what's possible when the cheater gets to just be real and unfold and share with you, go on a discovery journey with you?
Yeah.
What's been possible?
The possible is personal growth. The possible is personal opportunity to have healthy relationships in the future. But there is no guarantee that for the infidelity that they came into my office about, that doesn't mean that's going to be forgiven. It's still in the hands of the wounded to decide if they want to forgive you or not. But to do the work, regardless if your marriage or relationship lasts, you're going to leave with a better sense of yourself and a better confidence, hopefully, that you can be different, and a better understanding of how to be different. Yeah. Fascinating
practice you have, fascinating work. And I love it that you sit with both individuals. You said Shiva. Do you typically sit as a couple in your office, or do you keep them separate?
No. So usually they'll come. If you're really going to dig into this, you probably should keep them. They should each have their own therapist, do it separately. And then at some point bring them together, because, it's hard. It's like, ooh, wait, something about my significant other that I don't. It just doesn't feel safe because of, you've been talking about me, right, for that last hour. But I do sometimes. I will start with a couple, and we get kind of stuck, and then I need to see each other individually, and we have to set some ground rules of confidentiality around that. And so that's depends on the clients. You have to make a judgment on that.
You referenced earlier the Christian faith tradition. They say here on this earth, we as humans, and this is faith aside, this is probably just psychology, but we as humans, we tend to connect if we've wronged one another through forgiveness. So I seek forgiveness and I give forgiveness. This is what I do. And they say in heaven, if there is such a place, and I too, like you, I don't know if you have a faith. It sounds like you are of a faith. And so I come from the Christian tradition. I have deconstructed a lot of the exclusionary parts out of my life, and I make room for many now. And so I just find my way to love and to God and the universe, whatever it is, I find it through the story of Christianity and through Jesus, right? And when I think about making room for people, what would you say is the most important lesson that you've picked up in life, that you're so thankful you learned? Because when the moment was needed, and when you brought that state, that energy, Sir Francis of Assisi says, if words are necessary, use them. Meaning you don't need to use words, but something that you brought. What was it? How could you describe it? Some people say empathy, but of course, what is empathy? But what is it that you're thankful that you were in the presence of and you allowed to flow through you? What is that for you?
It's funny, as you ask me that question, I'm like, oh, it feels like a really, like I am the expert here, but it's my personal journey. And certainly I've learned
perhaps
that.
I'm just, perhaps I'll say like this. I'll just depressurize this whole thing, because I don't think really that I crave for anybody to be the expert, nor am I the expert. I ask questions to deepen my question. So you don't have to feel like my audience is looking for the exact answer. It's not about provocative. Yeah, thank you. I love it.
Yeah. The power of love and grace. It's just, I've experienced both in my life, and so grateful for that. And it helps me grow and helps me find community and find safety emotionally, as well as fun. I mean, really, we're all kind of wanting to have some fun around here. And so, well, I'd say, yeah, love and compassion.
They say the human spirit desires beyond forgiveness to live at peace. So whether there is a heaven, but heaven, they say, if there is a God, I choose to think there is a God. It's a yay or nay. Most often I feel like there's a presence. Sometimes I wonder if there is. So perhaps it's yay and nay. I'm okay with both, but I think there's a force here doing something, and is helping us co-create with whatever is going on. How do you, and again, this is not designed to put you on the spot or you give answer. This is, please don't let this be. But when you realize that people are having difficulty forgiving one another, and forgiveness just seems like it just seems impossible. No matter what you do, no matter how you show up, no matter how creative you get, it just seems like these people aren't willing, and it's not really of you, but this is. How do you and what do you do to be with people and assist them to move beyond the thing that's stucking them? Because sometimes forgiveness can be stuck, and we all want peace. So how do we get to this place of coming home?
Again, you just shine the light on their stuckness. You just say, wow, you're really holding on to this anger and resentment and hurt. And I wish I could help you, get past it. What do you think you need? I mean, again, I can't, I'm just sitting Shiva with them. I'm being present with them. I'm helping them see themselves. I think of myself as a mirror. I'm holding up a mirror so you can see yourself more clearly and understand where you're at. Because sometimes we can't see ourselves clearly, and help to get feedback from other people.
It's the beauty of the human experience, right? Have a chat with somebody else and they just reveal how they feel about themselves, and perhaps they're a little reflection how they see us. And perhaps it's all just a play for us to get a little more curious and explore a little bit more about what this is actually about. I love your book, More Than Sorry. My wife has a little play in life. It's called, and she read a book a while ago, Pay to Play, right? And so pay to play values, right? And so you have to, in order to play, you have to pay. And it just, it doesn't go, it's not one or the other. And so something created the storm. And I am a fan of Richard Rohr's work. I don't know if you've ever tapped into his work, but he's a Catholic, I think he's a Catholic priest, but he's one that pokes the structure, not to take it down, but to make better. And so he asks these questions that wrestle with concepts, right? And so he has this scenario or perspective where he talks about the never-ending apology. Because he goes, listen, there's something that happened, and if I traumatize you, and if it shows up 15 years down the line or 30 years down the line, and it triggers you, you know what? And instead of me waiting for it to happen, maybe every now and again, I just want to say, hey, listen, I'm sorry that had to happen for you and that had to happen for us. And just to be within that. What's your take on something, if I think about, we have a choice towards redemptive violence or restorative justice? We all want to restore. We want to find our way back. So the good news, like the Bible, the good news is always, God's always redeeming everything back to itself. Always is a purpose to all our pain, to all our struggle. And we can let it be the good news if we don't resist and don't stay stuck. How do you think we can be about this work in such a way that has us really enjoy it, but also take serious that this is some really meaningful work?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the ability to not take ourselves so seriously. I mean, to accept that we are flawed, and that's okay, and that's not, that those flaws can be healed, and those flaws can be band-aided over while we go on and look for other things. And the reality is, when our intuition tells us that something's funky in our relationship, or our partner, our friend is having some sort of flashback or pain related to, perhaps in this case, your infidelity, to have the courage to say out loud again, wow, I'm really sorry. I have a feeling you're thinking about what I did 5 years ago, and I'm really sorry that it's still with you. you know, to that Richard Rohr, and be able to always say, I'm sorry. I mean, and I say that in the book, it's not over. When you finish the last chapter, that doesn't mean you're done with your apology. It's going to continue.
What do you say to people who use this, but say they always feel that when that's the requirement to apologize 5, 10 years, 15, when that's a requirement or there's an invitation for that, they feel the surge of shame. What would your words be to help them through that? Because some people are like, well, I thought we dealt with that like 15 years ago. So why are we bringing this up now, honey? Like, why? We're at a family gathering. Why do we bring it up now? You know, what's the thing to remember or to remind the other of?
I would say to the client, I know it sucks that you have to continually know that it's the elephant in the living room. I get that you wish you would just have a giant eraser and it all go away and no one remember what happened. But you're human. You remember things bad that happened to you. Unfortunately, those are the imprints in our brain, is our traumas. And the trauma that you caused is stuck in other people's brain. And so, you have to have the courage and the humility to be able to say, I'm sorry again. Does that mean you rehash the whole event? No. You say, I'm sorry, and reassure them, you're a different person now, or you've learned from your mistakes. But don't go into how many hotel rooms did you rent, or, tell me again, you don't go into details again, because that just opens up the wound in a horrible way.
I love it that you talk about it sucks. And I'm going to tie together a few things. It sucks that we're flawed is kind of what we're saying. But in that moment, we have to kind of laugh like you just did, because we have to be empathetic towards, listen, doesn't it suck that we are human? Also, like, wait a minute. I am here now as a human. I'm not going anywhere. And so perhaps what I thought was the bad news, that it sucks that I'm flawed, can now be the good news, and it can draw me into deeper understanding. These are little gifts for me to get really curious about and see things hidden in plain sight because of the suckness. The thing that I said was the worst. It's like it all has a purpose. And I know Richard Rohr, he often talks about, and I know, for example, Bible talks about God's always redeeming ththings back to himself. He's always bringing and I mentioned this, bringing all that pain. There has to be a purpose for it. So sometimes people are like, well, it really sucks that I committed a sin. And it's like, but without sin, there would be no way that love would exist, because they say in psychoanalytic, and I'm going to botch this, but they say that love is, for example, if I don't have patience, if I give you my impatience, like I don't want my impatience, so I want to give it away. Now you look at my impatience, you don't want it, but you're like, sure, I'll take it. So love is that you take it and you put it inside of yourself, the impatience that I am. And then I observe my impatience through your way of being. And I become aware that you're probably impatient to some degree yourself, but then I observe how you handle it different than how I feel about it. And I go, if you can love it like that and make it safe in you, maybe then I would want to make it safe too. So instead of throwing out the sins, the flaws, say they're the evil things, and to your point, become curious. Why do we do this? Without all the labels, without all the, you're the bad one. You're the Judas. You're the betrayer. I think sometimes it takes courage for the person to create a flaw, to remind us all that we're all flawed, because the one that didn't create the infidelity, they have their own flaws themselves. So literally it's a wider conversation. So I love it. Yeah. So Deborah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Brene Brown has built a whole industry around accepting your vulnerabilities and idiosyncrasies, and it's beautiful. Her work is beautiful. So
I love it. Deborah, is there anything you want to share with my audience or would you say your final words of wisdom? Now there's going to be more words of wisdom, not your final, but if you could say some words of wisdom, and you said a lot, but if you were to tap it off, what would you say?
Okay. I love that. It sucks. We're all flawed, and redemption is possible. And that the challenge is to go on the personal growth journey and accept that this is lifelong, and it'll make you more interesting. It'll increase your intimacy with other people and connection.
And who doesn't want more intimacy? We're talking about bedroom, boardroom, everywhere. Intimacy with life, living fully alive, seeing, tasting, the texture. All things are good. We got to show up in this world, and then it shall be that way. So I love it. And what I love about your work is you don't churn something that's heavy into like, it's just laughing stock. It's like, no, let's get in there. Let's address. Let's focus. So where can people find you? I really want people who have this desire to read your book. And again, I want to tap into it myself fully.
Thank you.
Where can people find you?
Well, the book's on Amazon, like everything else. But yeah, go to my website, Dr. Deb Miller, drdebmiller.com. drdebmiller.com.
And they can find your book. And
there's a link to my book on there, and a link to podcasts I've done, and yours will play on there if it's okay with you. Yeah,
yeah, that's all right. Yeah, thanks for asking. No, it's good.
Good.
All right, Deborah, it was wonderful to have you on, and
I appreciate it, James.
It was, and you were graceful, and some important work. So keep going. Good job.
I sincerely hope you enjoyed that little interplay. If you liked the podcast episode, let us know by subscribing, leaving a little review, and sharing with a friend as you feel appropriate. Honestly, the guests that I host on this show, they love the feedback, and I personally love knowing that you're listening. So whether you choose to work with me as a guide or not, and that's your guide or not, that's simply great. Why, you ask? Well, because you're obviously one of those that's listened to the very end of this podcast. You've clearly made a decision to invest in yourself. And honestly, how isn't that just the best news? So if you decide you need and or want to get unstuck by activating your creativity and inner resources, if you want to see things clearly, if you want to get to your next level, if you want to live with vibrant energy and passion, simply go to www.jameshepner.com for one-on-one coaching, and or go to www.weeklywinsandlosses.com for the no-charge Friday noon Global Community Weekly Wins and Losses video call. So again, I thank you for investing in yourself. See you next time. My sincere hope is that you've gleaned a few nuggets for yourself and a few pieces of interest that help you move forward in your unique journey. So again, I thank you for joining me here. This is James Hepner clocking out. Until next time, peace out, rock up.